Twitter, I was actually talking about the spoken word.
Certainly that's offensive, but it's not tied to policies that Democrats are putting forward. So I think that's a distinction we can make.
In response, Craig, I would offer two words to answer the point that you're making, and those two words are Joe Biden.
Well,
and we have covered him, every single gaffe that he's made that we know of, at least, that we've covered him. So I don't think that this is where we just focus on one party or the other. But I think in the case of Ben Carson, we also have a situation where he went from being a doctor to suddenly he was talking about running for president. It was being embraced, and the inevitable happened. Quite frankly, I think he was a little bit over his head. You have this whole cadre of people who basically say, used to be I couldn't spell politician, now I are one.
Bob Franklin, another point. That's good, I'll tell you. He writes them before and then he works them in. He's done this before. Let's switch gears, Zerlina. Let's talk about the New York mayoral race as well. New York Times reporting this week, somewhat of an unflattering article on New York Council Speaker Christine Quinn, who is, of course, running for mayor. Here's a direct quote from that article. Controlling, temperamental, and surprisingly volatile, with a habit of hair-trigger eruptions of unchecked face-to-face wrath. Would the description of her temper, would it be different if she were a man, you think?
They wouldn't describe her that way. If she was a man, they would not use words like sensitive and temperamental. That's just media speak for she's emotional and she can't handle pressure. And I think, we're talking, she's running for New York City mayor. She's not running for Miss Congeniality. I think we should be talking about how she does her job, not the manner in which she interacts with people.
Go ahead, Bob.
Well, you talk about controlling, temperamental, and volatile. Isn't that how everybody is in New York?
That's actually some
that's a good point.
That's certainly my experience.
Francesca, go ahead, Francesca. Go ahead.
I was going to say that, one of the things she said this week, too, was that New Yorkers are tough. And it goes back to exactly what he was saying, is they're kind of used to this tough talk. And if she was trying to get elected and where I'm from, Kansas, it probably wouldn't work. But for New York, I think she'll be okay.
But here's the thing, Zerlina, because I think you made a point that I heard earlier this week as well. I mean, the New York Times typically, it's not known for, generally speaking, things like this. You got to wonder how something like that doesn't catch the eye of an editor.
Well, the New York Times makes mistakes sometimes, and I think this is one of them. Sheryl Sandberg's book, it keeps coming up, but, talking about how women have to lean in to become successful and move up the corporate ladder, that applies to politics as well. I think we have to be focusing on not being liked, but being likable. So maybe Christine Quinn has to work on that a little bit, but I think if she does a good job, I don't really care if she's mean or people think she's mean.
There's also the serious issue about, are women judged when it comes to, let me just put it this way, the B word.
They absolutely are, yes.
And, I think we also saw that when we were talking about Susan Rice. There was all kinds of coverage about the fact that she was, to put it mildly, assertive. And that seems to be a characteristic that is not something a woman is supposed to be, and of course she can't really compete if she's not.
So there is a double standard.
Yes.
Yes, I absolutely agree.
Francesca, you can see that point as well.
Yes, I think that there is absolutely a double standard with women. I think that's something we can actually all agree on today. But to be fair, she is the one who has self-described herself as the B word. So, probably help if she didn't call herself that.
You're being really pushy, Francisca.
Well, I'm not going to attack someone who I don't know for being pushy. I don't know how much of that is true. But I will say that a lot of people have said I'm pushy and aggressive, so...
We're gonna, we're not gonna touch that. We're not gonna touch that with a 10-foot pole. Do stay right there. When we come back, one of these brainiacs will be crowned the biggest brain. Stay with us. All right, as promised, time to crown one of our regular guests biggest brain. They're all part of the Brain Trust, but one of them had the biggest brain today. Here's the thing, and I want to thank, it's not really fair because we've got two first-timers. Yeah. So you were rookies, you did well, but Zerlina and Francesca, perhaps next time. Bob Franken is our biggest brain today because...
I'm not worthy.
Well, no, Bob, you are. You've got a huge head. He said hello first. That got him a point.
No, I think he took off in the lead.
And he resisted the urge to use profanity. He could have easily used the B word, and he did not. And he had a couple of some clever one-liners that he obviously wrote out beforehand and was determined to work them in no matter what we talked about. So, Bob Franken, you have the biggest brain. What is on that brain? Take it away.
Well, I want to talk about, get ready for this because it's a surprise subject, and that's same-sex marriage. And of course, the Supremes have a variety of options. They can take seriously that equal justice under law greeting that's chiseled into the entrance of their magnificent building. In other words, they can declare any impediment to same-sex marriage unconstitutional. Or a majority can decide that the law of the land tolerates intolerance. They can also wimp out and hide behind a procedural finding. But there is another approach that is not being considered. What about achieving equality by doing away with government-sanctioned marriage for everyone? That way there is no discrimination. People can have weddings if they want, but all of the benefits and legal advantages that accrue to spouses would be eliminated, which is fair to single people anyway. The arguments for strictly heterosexual marriage are weak. Procreation, we certainly don't need it for that. Stability for the children, we have a divorce rate over 40%, which doesn't even account for the abusive families that stay together. Maybe DOMA, the Defense of Marriage Act, should be replaced by GROMA, the Get Rid of Marriage Act. Yes, I'm being facetious, but no more ridiculous than those who oppose equal rights under the law for all sexual orientations.
Bob Franken, thank you so much for that. I am going to assume that you, sir, are single.
I probably will be now.
But here's the thing, Zerlina. I mean, he raises a few interesting points there, that the state should not be in the business of sanctioning marriage. What say you to that?
Well, I mean, there is the argument that it's part of our tradition, and you still need it, and just include everyone in it. I think that there is strength to that argument, that it's part of the American tradition.
Now, Bob, I would say I've got friends. I'm certainly not one of these people, but there are people that I know who've gotten married for the financial benefit. You say do away with that.
Yes. I mean, first of all, anybody who gets married for the financial benefit is sending himself to a life of unhappiness. To say nothing of disappointment.
Francesca, I assume that you watched and listened closely to the arguments made before the High Court this week. What struck you most about them?
I think on the first day that the justices thought that they might just throw the case out essentially and decide that it has no standing. So after all of this fuss to get to the Supreme Court and have this issue in front of the justices, everything might go back to the way that it was before in California with Prop 8. So that was something I found really interesting, that now they might just essentially throw the case out.
Yeah, Bob, a couple of justices did seem to question standing as well, which is something that I found especially interesting. But a lot of folks don't perhaps know that it takes 4 justices to hear a case, 5 justices to decide a case. So from time to time, you get situations where you've got folks in that room who really don't even want to hear the case that's being presented. Anyway, Zerlina Maxwell, Bob Franken, our biggest brain, and Francesca Chambers.
Scary, isn't it?
Well, you said it, not me, good sir. We do hope you all will come back and be a part of the Brain Trust at some other juncture. That's going to do it for this Saturday, though. Join me tomorrow, 3 o'clock Eastern. I'll be joined by former Boston Mayor and Vatican Ambassador Ray Flynn. Also here with me, former members of Congress, Connie Mack and Mary Bono Mack. They are, of course, married. They are married, Bob, and they're happy. Until then, keep it right here on MSNBC for all the latest news updates throughout the evening, and have yourselves a fantastic Saturday night.